Are we merely spectators in the grand theatre of existence? Or do we maybe possess the power to emerge as protagonists? Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. This is the 7th edition of the SASI debate, proudly brought to you by SAYWHAT and supported by the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe. My name is Mrs. Jones, and I am your debate mistress. Joining me today in studio are 4 participants. Teams, please introduce yourselves, starting from the team on my right, going to the team on my left.
My name is Tsawelenkosi Merslin Ngube from Lupane State University. With me is Mr. Mvikeli Ndlovu.
Tatenda Alexio Shambare, representing HIT.
Lisali Ngube, representing HIT.
I'm Andrew Maturu, representing Gwanda State University.
And I'm Chelsea William, representing Gwanda State University.
Tandokuhle Sibanda from MSU.
I'm Tabiso Sibanda from the MSU.
Now that we're well acquainted, let the games begin. This debate follows the British parliamentary style. The rules are, each participant will be given exactly 4 minutes to present their case. Points of information are allowed. However, if your POI has been rejected, you have to wait for exactly 30 seconds before requesting for a second opportunity. With that being said, the motion reads: this House prefers a world where feminist movements have separate strategies and stances for each region rather than a global strategy. This House prefers a world where feminist movements have separate strategies and stances for each region rather than a global strategy. The motion has been stated. Prime Minister, the ball is now in your court.
The motion survives on the idea that regional strategies would aid feminist movement on great deal rather than global strategy. Global strategies means the unified approaches and actions implemented worldwide to address gender inequality. Then, feminist movement, it means a social, political, and cultural movement aimed at achieving gender equality. Then we got the separate stances for a region. We say feminist movement will develop strategies that are specific to the cultural, social, economic, political context of different regions rather than pursuing a uniform global strategy. Firstly, we'll say regionalization acknowledges the diversity of women's experiences worldwide. Women in different regions face unique challenges from cultural and regional and religious differences to distinct political and economic context. The feminist movement is better equipped to address context-specific issues like female genital mutilation in Africa. We've got honor killings all the way from Asia, and also reproductive rights in the Latin America. Thirdly, we say that regionalization, it empowers local voices and leadership, also reducing the reliance on Western, Eurocentric perspectives that are historically dominated, dominates the global feminist discourse. This approach promotes the inclusivity, allowing women from diverse backgrounds to take ownership of their struggles and solutions. And also we say that regionalization, it also builds stronger alliances with local organizations governments, and communities, fostering a sense of ownership and responsibilities among stakeholders. This grassroots approach leads to a more effective and sustainable change. As my opposition will come and debate on this, I say that we shouldn't listen to them, or we might just lend them an ear and hear what they have to say. But we have to deal more on what the feminism is all about. They may come and say that they oppose and say that we use global strategies as they strengthen the unity globally. There's solidarity, they shared the resources, and the consistency and clarity. Is it? Okay. I'll say that the regional approach to feminist movement, it recognizes to rich diversity of women's experiences and also empowers the local voices to drive change. So, in order to drive this forward, I think the embracement of this approach and the creativity of more inclusive, effective and sustainable active feminism movement can truly represent the global sisterhood of the feminism theory. With this, thank you.
That was the Prime Minister and now Leader of Opposition. Please take center stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, the government came here and mentioned that feminists in different countries have unique challenges, but here we say feminism has shared experiences that transcends borders, and that is in many forms of gender-based oppression, and these are transnational problems. So when we unify the feminists in different countries, we are able to produce better results and propel the goals of feminism forward. Next, the government talked about the history of the West that has oppressed us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's leave the history in the past. Let's leave the past in the past. Let's look at the case of Kenya, where Kenya, with the help of other feminists, was able to rebut and stop femicides, which was occurring in the country. Next, the government then looked at the grassroots approach. Ladies and gentlemen, with the grassroots approach, we are prone to more mistakes, but let us say we take the top-down approach, which is more effective, as in certain countries, we reduce the amount of mistakes and also tend to look at more effective methods than only repeating the methods because we want to seclude our information.
Point of information.
Denied. Next, feminism helps us to address the root causes. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said in the beginning, feminism transcends borders. Therefore, there is an interlining of situations that occur. There are shared experiences throughout the world. So this helps us to address the root causes of those shared problems. Next, ladies and gentlemen, when we blend national approaches of different countries, we will produce better results on achieving feminism goals. It can also bring light to certain females in other countries who do not know that they are being oppressed. When we gatekeep our information, this leads to certain females in other countries not knowing that they are being oppressed. Ladies and gentlemen, we keep treading lightly on the issue of religion and culture. But ladies and gentlemen, when we look at the patriarchal regime, we also notice that they have used both religion and culture to oppress females. So we must also globalize feminism so that we may be able to also look at the people who are being oppressed culturally and religiously. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a common saying that says, a problem shared is a problem halved. when nations come together to share their problems about feminist oppression that occurs in their countries, we are able to produce better results. When the problems become many and when they are put together, this provides better and bigger bargaining power to the feminists in the world. For as one voice is usually overshadowed, but in the presence of a large number of voices, we are able to cause changes. Ladies and gentlemen, if we combine the feminists in Korea that brought the birth strike with the feminists in Africa, we'll be able to improve the situation of Africa. For countries that do not have resources, globalization of feminism will help these countries to be able to get the resources that they are lacking so that they can be able to perpetuate the goals of feminism. As feminists, let us work together to achieve the greater good. Ladies and gentlemen, I say, united we stand, divided we fall. Thank you.
United we stand, divided we fall. That was the leader of opposition stating her case. And now, let's leave the floor open to the Deputy Prime Minister.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I've got to say I'm very disappointed in what our opposition has had to say about such a heartfelt and a more intricate issue that we are discussing here today, as to notify whether or not we should move towards a global approach or rather a regional approach. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm talking about is not a situation where we can come here and engage in intellectual masturbation as to say that we are speaking English but then not retaliating or bringing about solutions to the problems that we have. They mentioned that the global approach will come here and bring a shared experience that transcends borders. But then, ladies and gentlemen, when we look at this, we get to realize that our opposition here looks at women as a homogeneous factor or as a homogeneous species that faces the same problems, that faces the same situation and lives in the same environment. Hence, it does not really apply to the order of the regionality of approach in feminism, because there are different states, different regions with all different cultures and norms and values. They also went on to mention that they have to address root causes from a top-down approach. Now, as to question, where are the roots? The roots are beneath. So we begin at an individual perspective or at an individual center, as to say that we are looking at these things from a regional perspective, which is more influential to go on up to the up approach, right? So we are looking at an approach that can come down and settle down for the simple and basic problems that we are looking at as government or as a nation or people, right? They went on to use the factor of religion and culture as something that is regionally oriented, but we get to understand that some of these religious states or religious corporations that come in and oppress and insist on the patriarchal systems that they have been talking about are from a global stature. And now we understand that in our modern communities or in our communities, religion is where most people get influence, or that the most influential entities of our communities, which means that we shouldn't view religion as a problem maker, but rather we should look at it as a potential problem solver. Now, moving on to strengthen our case, I'd like us to look at 4 issues, which is the contextualization, which is the accountability, the responsiveness, and the effectivity of a regional situation or a regional approach of looking at these things. For starters, contextualization. We are saying that a regional approach has an appreciation of the differences in identity of these women that we are taking into consideration. We are saying that no 2 women are the same. There are different political arenas, there are different economic arenas, there are different social arenas. So what we are saying is, for the basis of understanding understanding of the problem. We have to zero down to a context where these women are appreciated or are helped as per what they need and not as per what is perceived they need, right? Now, in efficiency, we are saying that a global approach would create a bureaucratic way of thinking. Also, in responsiveness, it's much easier to respond with lesser bureaucracy to move down with. And then in accountability, we are saying that from a regional perspective, we know who to ask questions about the efficiency, about the responsiveness of a certain issue that we are taking into consideration when it comes to feminism approaches or when it comes to implementation of these initiatives that are readily made or tailor-made to curb gender inequalities amongst men and women. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say thank you because, thank you so much.
That was the Deputy Prime Minister. Up next, we have the Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, the government here have tried their best to try and discredit our motion. They are calling for regionalism when we are trying to face a global enemy. What a fallacy. It's about as inspiring as a lukewarm cup of tea on a rainy day. A timid treat when what we need is a bold statement, a bold advancement. They claim to champion diversity, but their strategy is a recipe for disaster. A fragmented movement is a weakened movement. We've argued for a global tragedy, not because it's easy, but it's necessary. It's the only way to fight our common enemy. They pretend as if women face their own unique challenges, but the challenges are the same. Oppression, inequality, sexual exploitation. These are all have a common denominator. We are not afraid of a challenge. We are not afraid to think big. We are not afraid to demand what the world we deserve. We stand for global feminism. A feminism that will not rest until every woman in every corner of the earth is truly free. The government vision of fragmented feminist movement is a disservice to women everywhere. It is a retreat of the hard-earned gains that have been won in the past. We have shown that a global strategy is not only possible, but it's necessary. It is a key to unlocking full potential of the feminist movement and creating a world where gender equality is not just a dream, but a reality. We urge this House to reject this myopic view of regionalism. Let us embrace feminism that is bold, ambitious, and unafraid to challenge global forces of patriarchy and oppression movement. Let us build a movement that is worthy of a woman to seek to serve. They want to offer us crumbs when we deserve the whole cake. They tell us to be content with the small victory of solving those regional problems. But our hearts yearn and scream for a greater change. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine SAYWHAT as an organization operating on its own without the global ties with Sweden. Would they have made it? Are we still dreaming? Ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the reality. United we stand, divided we fall.
Point of information.
Allowed?
can you really use global ties and Sweden in the same sentence? Because Sweden is like one region, but you're talking about global ties.
Yes, it's a global tie because this is a global situation. We are not just addressing, I'm saying, imagine SAYWHAT addressing the challenges on their own within the region. Okay, thank you. My time is up.
That was the Deputy Leader of Opposition, and now Member of Government, please take center stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the closing government, we are coming with an argument that says feminism is the bus, the global strategies, they are the bus, and the regions are the seats. There are specific seats in the bus. Everyone is going to the same place. We have the same goal, and we are not going to discredit all global strategies. We are just saying that we need to focus more on the regional strategies. For example, the opening opposition gave an example of a one-size-fits-all, which is wrong because all these things are different depending on which region you are in. They spoke of genital mutilation, which is not happening in America, so we can't really use the same solutions we are using here in America. They said a problem shared is a problem solved. But doesn't that give credit to our motion because we are sharing the problem? We are not discrediting the global strategies. We are just saying we prefer the regional ones because they are faster, they work easier. They also spoke about united we stand, divided we fall. But we are not divided. We're just united at different fronts. We are fighting the same war. We are just saying instead of using one strategy for everyone that doesn't apply to everyone, have some strategies that are specific to certain regions. For example, you have regions like Asia. You do know that by wearing a miniskirt, a woman has fought for feminism without knowing about it. In Asia, miniskirts are literally a norm. You can't go to Asia and start telling Chinese people to wear miniskirts when they are already wearing them. We need that more in Africa. We need SADC to talk about that more than we need Asia to talk about it. And then we can also talk about other regions like the NATO alliance. The NATO alliance, they are all about war. They are all about weapons. They are all about what? When they have the power to spread word about feminism and it makes more impact. This is one fight. Feminism is the bus, and we are not saying that global strategies are wrong. We are not discrediting them totally. We are fighting the same fight. We are keeping the global strategies, but we are focusing more on the regional strategies because they are faster. They have increased effectiveness. Like I said, SADC works faster in Southern Africa. For example, you saw what happened during the elections. One main complaint in SADC was all over Zimbabwe. United Nations could not come as fast as SADC to Zimbabwe. So if we are addressing feminism, using SADC in Zimbabwe would work faster than using United Nations. Again, their policies are almost the same, so we're not really discrediting the United Nations. We're just saying SADC works faster. We can also talk about the bird strike in Korea, which they also made reference to. But Korea is one region, again, crediting our side of the motion. Because Korea is one region, you can't make an example of one country that used a bird strike and succeeded and then call it a global strategy. That is one country, which is one region. So they're saying the goal remains the same. Feminism is one bus. The global strategies, they are one bus. But Korea used their regional strategies and they succeeded, which are faster and they provide more solutions at a faster rate than the global strategies. For example, I know a shift at Blanket Mine that has one lady working with over 200 men at level 22 in a mine. That is more than 500 meters underground. You do realize how vulnerable she is. Calling UN to help her.
You said feminism is a bus and all the other regions are seats. Thank you for supporting the global cause of being the global. Because for us to get there, it's a global solution. Thank you for supporting.
Remember, the motion says this House prefers feminist movements which are specific to regions. It doesn't discredit the global movements. We prefer them more because they are faster, they work easier. And by using all those regional methods, we end up having one global goal, which is feminism. And feminism is mainly fighting gender inequality, which is what we all want. So we are in the same fight, but let us use the regional fights more because they are faster and they address people more immediately than the global ways. For example, I gave you an example of someone at Blanket Mine. UN will not get there, but SADC can. Thank you.
That was the member of government making his case, and now we leave the floor open to the member of opposition.
Madam Speaker, ma'am, the two main clashes that we get from the first half of the debate is what we get from the government side. They were saying that people from different regions, they should take ownership of their own struggles, right? The best know what they're suffering and the best know what they're going through, right? So they believe they're the ones who should take up whatever they're facing and hang that alone. That's the main clash which you get. And from the opposition, right, what we get, the main clash is they're saying together we stand still, but divided we fall. Those are the two main clashes that we get. And from my speech and my second speaker's speech, I'm going to show you how we best rank over the two houses and stuff. So, okay, Madam Speaker, ma'am, first things first, before we dive deeper into today's debate, right, we don't get much characterization of what feminism looks like, right? So to us, what you're going to get is a much characterization because we believe the PM failed to do that. When you're talking about feminism, right, you're talking of a community of women, right? You're talking about a community, right? You're talking about sisterhood, right? You're talking about a bond whereby women are saying, yes, even if you are from Africa, we hear you, we hear your cries, we are going to stand with you, right? Even if you are from Asia, we are with you, we stand with you, and we are going to support you no matter what you are saying. And what we get from this side, they come here and tell us that these people suffer different things. They suffer from different oppressions, right? Pane, what you tell in today's motion that the oppression is still the same, but the extent of that oppression is different, right? But what you are trying to fight, you are not trying to fight the extent of oppression, right? What you are trying to fight is the oppression on its own. And so the extent of oppression, I don't think is the main topic in today's debate, right? For example, they're talking about you've got gender mutilation in Kenya, right? We also have some other women in Asia, right? We also have some other in Latin America. That's their example which they give. They are saying all these women, they suffer from cultural expropriation, right? Okay. These are still women, right, who are not getting their rights, right? So we believe what you ought to fight is that oppression, right, not the extent of the oppression, right? Okay, panel, so you're going to answer a few questions from us. So what we have answered is what feminist movements look like, right? We told you that these are women who are saying we're with you, whatever you are doing, we're going to stand with you, and we hear your cry, and we are going to join your struggle. That's feminism, right? And second, we're going to show you how our side of the house best preserve the feminism movement on its own, right? How the essence of feminism is best preserved from our side of the house, right? And why it is important to take a universal stance, right? And how we best preserve the movement, right? I've said about that. Okay. So our first argument is having these women exist in different places does not mean they suffer from different things, right? So even if they're different places, they suffer from different kinds of oppression, but it's still oppression, right? So by helping each other, we have more manpower, panel. For example, we have got some other women who are in marginalized countries, right? Where they do not have feminist movement because of their political structure, their socio-economic things, right? They've got some other communities which do not allow women standing up, voicing up. They do not have this feminist movement. But you appreciate feminist movement from America, right? Going to those countries and saying we're going to help you, right? And secondly, so the moment you say this, guys, you face your struggles on your own, you guys face your struggles on your own, we are kind of undermining this kind of these struggles which they have, right? We are saying every struggle is still the same. Let us hang it in the same way, right? Whether they are facing gender mutilation, whether they're facing that, let us fight this the same way, right? And thirdly, we are trying to promote solidarity within women, right? And solidarity and the essence of feminism, right? The moment we say, for example, here in Zimbabwe, we've got older feminists and younger feminists. The older feminists are saying, by our time we're doing this and that. You guys are now just wearing miniskirts, this and that, right? So if these feminist movements are separated, right, the feminism essence of its own, we end up having conflicts within feminists and so on. Secondly, so we are trying to make sure that these other countries who have already reached that level, right, they pull other countries to reach the same level where they are. And fifth, we're saying, so we're trying to break oppression in all its contexts.
The member of opposition has spoken. Now let's hear what the government whip has to say.
Let us all remember that feminism serves as a tool for advocacy and accountability, allowing civil society and women's rights organizations to hold governments for their commitments to gender equality, improving women's status and their rights, right? So what happens is that in this world that we are fighting against feminism. The global strategy doesn't take into account the fact that we have local norms, right? We have cultural, social norms, religious norms, in which we have to make them, we have to make sure that their efforts are more acceptable to us and more effective, right? So we basically are saying that the innovation, that feminist strategies, right, which are more focused on regions, right, they can experiment with different strategies and learn from each other's successes and failures, such that when a certain strategy is implemented in a country like Zambia, right, Zambia is very similar to us, so which means it can most probably apply also to Zimbabwe, right? We are advocating for the women's empowerment, not just saying that we are advocating women's empowerment in their country, because we cannot say that a woman, we do a campaign maybe sort of like we do a campaign like the Free the Nipple that was held in America, and we are saying that all feminists should come and support us. I can't do that as an African woman because I am expected, I'm bound by my culture, I'm bound by my social responsibilities, I'm bound, okay? And then we are saying that we want to empower women, which means in Zimbabwe, in a place like Zimbabwe, right, we are talking about empowering women by education, making them have more opportunities in terms of education, but we can say, you guys, you can also make $1 billion you can also make $1 billion company in America or whatever that they are saying. If you see right now, most organizations, right, they are based in the Western countries, right? They are based the most feminist movements. They are based in the Western countries, right? In which a global strategy often reflects Western priorities and perspective, which may not be relevant or appropriate for us Africans or non-Western context, right? We are talking that we want to empower local voices and separate strategies, empowering local female leaders. Let us look at a situation where we have like there was this woman that I saw on internet, a girl in Rwanda who was advocating for women, and she was saying that today's economic models have failed and flawed and they are sexist, right? She is in Rwanda. She is not in America. It's because they in their culture in Rwanda, right? Men are most probably they are most probably trusted more by in advocating for political systems, economic system, having businesses and so forth, right? That's a woman in Rwanda. So we have to look for a solution in which that can suit Rwanda, right? And the point when they say that a birth strike is a global strategy. Let us look for America. Let us look at America for the first time, right? America was able to advocate. We can sort of call it a birth strike because it was sort of like this were abortion protests, right? We can't do that here because fertility. What can I say? I can say in Zimbabwe we prioritize virility, right? We prioritize families. We prioritize that culture, right? So we cannot say that I cannot openly say that I want an abortion, just like in America where they have an economic status that is better than us. With this, I thank you.
That was the government whip stating her case. Up next, we have the opposition whip. Please take center stage.
Panel, we think that the reason why there's women who actively participate in bringing down other women is because of people like from government who will stand tall and say that as African women, we don't do this, therefore we cannot condone it, therefore we cannot be part of the struggle, which also misses the point. My speaker already comes here and characterizes feminist as a movement too. It's more than a movement. We're trying to create a community of women, a sisterhood that encourages women and creates safe spaces for them wherever they exist. And in so doing, what we're trying to say is whatever violation, whatever means or kind of oppression that a woman is faced with is something that should not be looked down upon or degraded or questioned to a degree. But the moment we start separating the struggles and saying, just because in Zimbabwe of gender mutilation, let's not pay attention to things such as freeing the nipple in essence. So what we're trying to do from a global perspective is create a united front, solidarity in the sense that wherever a woman exists, they are free to fight for whatever cause that they believe in, and they feel like they are supported to whatever extent that they need or require the support, right? Let's talk about standards and what influences these standards. From an African perspective, they already talk about how there's political and religious influences that they tie down what we would look at as women's rights or what we would look at as human rights, because they are based on all of these religious and political contexts in essence, right? And we think that that's something that we ought to be running away from, because this is the reason why they would say that as a woman in church, perhaps you can wear a pair of pants, but you could never stand in front of the podium because as the church, this is something that we do not believe in. But if you set a global standard to say women need to be given access to these spaces, where in whatever context that they exist in, you then do not limit the struggle or the protest or to whatever degree or to whatever extent. And my partner already explains to you that what we're trying to do is eliminate inequality as a whole and absolutely, and make sure that women operate at the same standard on a global level. But the moment we try and separate the struggles and say focus on this and not focus on that, we think that the goalposts of feminism as a whole end up shifting and we end up not being able to achieve the goals that we set up to achieve at the end of the day. So the main clash of this debate is when is the feminist as a when is feminism as a movement most effective? We think that it's more effective from our side of the house because we tell you that even if the type or the kind of oppression a woman faces in a particular instance is different from the other kind of oppression that they face in the other instance, it's still oppression. What differs is the extent of that particular oppression, but it's still oppression at the end of the day. And what we want is to fight it completely and make sure that it's completely eradicated. But once we limit the standards to say, let them only conform to things such as religion, let them only conform to that specific context that these women exist in, then we don't completely eradicate it at the end of the day. And the ownership of struggle needs to be owned up on a global scale because we want feminism to be a movement that caters to women wherever they are and in whatever crisis that they exist in. And the problem with government is even in an African context, you do have the elite, you do have the not so elite. So there are problems in that specific space again, would not be the same. And that's why a woman would go to a police station and say, I was fondled. Police will not take them seriously. But another woman would come and say, I was actually raped. Then they would pay particular attention to that because they think that things need to only exist in the extreme for them to be actually considered as violation at the end of the day. And that's what we don't want. We think that oppression is oppression. The degree of it can then be had a conversation about what we want to focus on is completely eradicating these things at the end of the day. So it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter from what angle or from what perspective you're facing all of these violations as a one. But we think that the feminist movement ought to represent everyone to their best of their capabilities and to the maximum capacity so that these things are completely eradicated and they are not at all influenced by religion and politics.
That was the opposition whip concluding this debate. And now we'll leave this time to our judges to deliberate.
Thank you so much for the debate. So just start with the feedback first and then give you the call later. So I think the team that won the debate is the team that showed us why, firstly, we need to have a preference for localized regional feminist efforts to be prioritized as opposed to global ones, and a team that best showed us a way up of those issues, right? So what did we get in the debate? From opening government, we get this analysis that the feminist movement is better equipped to tackle context-specific goals or issues, right? So that is to say that we need to be removed from a Eurocentric perspective of what feminism ought to look like. That individuals fight different battles, whether it is in Africa, whether it is in Southern Africa, whether it is in Europe or in the Americas. We think we value that argument. They also tell us this issue of how it encourages inclusivity and ownership of the struggle, which was a very important argument to say what does the struggle look like, what do feminist movements in their essence seek to achieve, right? So we think we ought to have had a lot more analysis into that. Also, another issue that we have is this issue of empowering local voices to drive their own particular change. We felt we enjoyed that argument and we valued it so much. What do we get from opening opposition? We get this interpretation that we need a top-down approach. Feminism transcends borders, and globalization looks to address issues of religion and cultural exploitation. What do we get from closing government? We get this analysis that, well, this issue is not necessarily about either or, but rather a preference. What do we ought to prefer and what should we support? They tell us that by discrediting, we're not necessarily discrediting global strategies, but rather preferring local ones. And why are we preferring them? They give us this analysis that, well, it is easier for regional blocs to attack issues or to address regional feminist issues as opposed to global ones, as they are more responsive. They give us issues to why it is important that the bird strike was so effective in Korea, because it was a context and context-specific solution. What do we get from closing opposition? We get this issue that oppression is oppression, right? So it is not necessarily to say that there's oppression in Africa, there's oppression in the United States, there's oppression in Europe, but we ought to look at what that oppression exists in a greater scheme, and we ought to fight that oppression no matter what it looks like. So we get a principle analysis as to this is what oppression exists like contextually, however, it belongs to a larger group. Let's solve that. They also give us that this issue that, again, that although individuals suffer different forms of oppression, it is important for us to tackle the bigger issue, right? So what was our call and who ranked what? So based on the analysis that we got, we felt that fourth in today's debate went to opening opposition, third went to closing opposition, second went to closing government, and first went to opening government. Opening government wins this debate on the analysis that it is important for us to empower local voices and to drive change. It encourages inclusivity and ownership of the struggle, and it is important for us to remove bureaucracy, which was a very important argument that a lot of the teams did not talk about, which is the fact that the feminist movement is particularly harmed by the issue of bureaucracy and belonging to a greater extent as opposed to having issue. Please come for personal feedback, because we feel as a panel that there's a lot of nuance and a lot of analysis that you guys can provide in your debates that could help you, to advance issues. Like, for example, in today's debate, you could have tackled it on an even greater extent to explain to us why there's a different metric between African feminism and Eurocentric feminism, why there's a difference between Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie and J.K. Rowling in terms of their feminism, and why struggle in and of itself is something that is existentially different regionally as opposed to a global struggle. But anyway, thank you so much for the debate. We really enjoyed it. Please do come for personal feedback. Here.
And that brings us to the end of this debate. Thank you to our judges and well done to the participants. This is the Speak and Solve initiative, and I am your debate mistress, Ms. Jones. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, goodbye.